Is World War III already underway? What if I told you the next global war isn't just possible? It's already unfolding in slow motion, right before our eyes. The world is a matchstick away from total chaos, and if you think we still have years to prevent it, you're dead wrong. The truth is, 2025 could be the year everything explodes, and we're about to show you 5 terrifying reasons why the next world war could kick off in the next 12 months. Governments aren't just preparing for war anymore, they're expecting it. Right now, global superpowers are shifting into wartime economies, boosting military production and stockpiling weapons like there's no tomorrow. Russia's war machine is in full gear, China is one step away from moving on Taiwan, and NATO is teetering on the edge of direct conflict. And behind the scenes, financial collapses, energy wars, and AI-powered cyber attacks are pushing the world toward an unavoidable breaking point. This isn't just speculation, it's happening now. The question isn't if war is coming, but who strikes first and how far it will go. In this video, we break down 5 critical flashpoints that could ignite the biggest war in human history. Number 1 will leave you speechless. Do not miss this breakdown. Watch until the end. What do you think? Are we on the brink of World War III? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to stay ahead of the chaos. 5. Economic freefall and the dollar's decline could trigger global chaos. The financial system is a house of cards, and 2025 might be the year someone kicks the table over. The signs are already flashing red. U.S. debt just passed $40 trillion, inflation refuses to stay down, and BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are ditching the dollar at record speed. The petrodollar, the system that's kept the U.S. economy dominant for decades, is on life support. China and Saudi Arabia are now trading oil in yuan, and the once unthinkable is becoming reality. The world is moving away from the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. If this accelerates, Washington could be forced to respond, either through economic warfare or something far more dangerous. And let's not forget America's own financial time bomb. The Federal Reserve is juggling interest rate hikes, but it's a losing battle. The housing market is frozen, corporate debt is piling up, and the stock market is a high-stakes casino held together by algorithms and wishful thinking. A full-blown economic collapse wouldn't just mean a recession, it would mean millions of jobs lost, supply chains breaking down, and an angry, desperate population looking for someone to blame. Historically, major wars have been used to reset economic disasters, and the U.S. isn't the only country staring down a financial abyss. China's real estate sector is imploding, Europe is struggling with energy shortages, and global food prices are spiking again due to climate extremes and supply chain disruptions. This is the perfect storm for escalating conflicts over resources. Energy, food, and minerals are the new battlegrounds, and countries will fight, economically at first, but possibly militarily if things spiral out of control. History tells us that when economies fail, leaders look for external enemies to rally the people. Could Washington turn its financial mess into a military campaign against China or Russia? Could Beijing or Moscow preemptively strike to protect their interests before the global economy collapses? Desperate superpowers do desperate things, and the world is entering a period where financial desperation is becoming the norm. If you think the Great Depression led to war, imagine what happens when the entire planet is drowning in debt and looking for a way out. 4. The Taiwan powder keg is about to explode. For years, analysts have warned that Taiwan could be the spark that ignites a global war, and 2025 is looking dangerously close to detonation. China has made it crystal clear. Taiwan is not independent, and any move toward sovereignty will be met with force. But here's the problem. Taiwan isn't backing down, and neither is the U.S. military. Budgets are surging on all sides, and both Washington and Beijing are preparing for what increasingly feels like the inevitable. Let's look at the facts. China is now running non-stop military exercises around Taiwan, simulating full-scale island invasions and testing how quickly they could cut Taiwan off from the world. Satellite imagery shows China doubling its missile stockpiles, building hypersonic weapons at an alarming pace, and deploying naval strike groups into the Pacific at record levels. The U.S. is responding with massive arms shipments to Taipei, and Congress just passed another $10 billion military aid package to help Taiwan shore up its defenses. The Pentagon has been running war game scenarios, and the results are terrifying. Any U.S.-China war over Taiwan would likely involve massive casualties on both sides within the first 90 days. Here's where things get even scarier. The 2024 U.S. election results have left Washington divided, and Beijing might see this as the perfect moment to strike. Xi Jinping is under massive pressure to deliver on his promise to reunify Taiwan with China, and with China's economy struggling under debt, youth unemployment, and a crumbling real estate sector, he needs a distraction. Nationalism is a powerful tool, and historically, authoritarian leaders in trouble turn to war when they need to solidify control. Now add Japan, Australia, and NATO into the mix. Japan has openly declared that any attack on Taiwan is an attack on Japan. Australia has signed a security pact with the U.S. and Britain, AUKUS, to counter China's rise, and European nations are quietly moving naval forces into the Indo-Pacific. If China makes a move on Taiwan, the U.S. will have no choice but to respond. And suddenly we're looking at a multi-front war involving nuclear superpowers. Could China gamble on a lightning-fast invasion, hoping the U.S. and its allies hesitate? Would Washington be willing to risk nuclear war to defend Taiwan? With tensions higher than ever and military buildups reaching Cold War levels, we might not have to wait much longer to find out. 3. The Russia-NATO conflict is on the brink of full-scale war. It's not just Ukraine anymore. The war that started in 2022 has mutated into something far more dangerous, and 2025 might be the year NATO and Russia officially cross the point of no return. If you think this conflict is contained to Eastern Europe, think again. It's spreading, and fast. Let's start with the battlefield reality. Russia is on the offensive. After years of grinding warfare, Moscow has adapted, doubling down on drone warfare, long-range missile strikes, and advanced battlefield AI systems. The Russian economy has fully transitioned into a wartime machine, pumping out tanks, missiles, and ammunition at a pace that Western analysts did not expect. Meanwhile, Ukraine is running out of men and munitions, and NATO knows it. In the last 6 months, Western military shipments have surged again, with the U.S., Britain, and Poland pushing for more aggressive tactics, including allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles inside Russian territory. But here's where things get truly terrifying. Russia isn't just fighting Ukraine anymore, it's squaring off against NATO itself. The Baltic states are on edge, Poland is building up its military at a record pace, and Moscow has issued repeated threats against Sweden and Finland, who are now officially part of NATO. Russian warplanes have violated NATO airspace dozens of times in the past 3 months, and nuclear threats are coming directly from Putin's top officials. Moscow has deployed tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, a move that could escalate the war at a moment's notice. And it's not just Europe. Russian forces are now active in the Arctic, where they're aggressively challenging NATO claims over energy-rich territories. China is backing Russia in diplomatic and economic ways that hint at a much deeper alliance, while Iran is feeding Russia advanced drone technology that has fundamentally changed the war. The world is watching as 2 massive military blocs stare each other down, and one wrong move, one missile strike too far, one NATO convoy hit by Russian forces could set off a global explosion. Could 2025 be the year that a NATO-Russia direct war officially begins? The pieces are falling into place, and history tells us that when global powers push each other to the brink, they don't just stop. They either step back or they charge forward. With both sides digging in deeper than ever, stepping back might not be an option anymore. 2. The Middle East is a ticking time bomb ready to detonate. The Middle East has always been a global flashpoint, but 2025 is shaping up to be the year it spirals completely out of control. The signs are everywhere. Old alliances are collapsing, Proxy wars are turning into direct conflicts, and global superpowers are getting dragged in. If you thought past Middle East wars were bad, what's coming next could make them look tame. Let's start with Israel and Iran, the most immediate trigger for an all-out regional war. In the last few months, Israel has stepped up direct military strikes inside Iran, targeting nuclear facilities, missile sites, and even key Iranian military commanders. Iran has retaliated by arming Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthi rebels with increasingly advanced weapons, leading to drone and missile strikes deep into Israeli territory. The possibility of a full-scale Israeli-Iranian war is no longer just a theory, it's an expectation. If Israel decides to preemptively strike Iran's nuclear program, Tehran has already vowed an immediate full-scale response, which could mean hundreds of missiles raining down on Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem. Now add the U.S. into the mix. Washington has been increasing its military presence in the Persian Gulf, preparing for potential large-scale operations. U.S. warships and aircraft carriers are now permanently stationed in the region, and Washington has drawn a clear red line. If Iran attacks Israel directly, the U.S. will intervene. That would immediately turn a regional conflict into a full-blown war between Iran and the United States. And once that happens, Russia and China could step in, either diplomatically or militarily, to back Iran, further escalating the situation. But that's just one front. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are also in the crosshairs. The Houthis in Yemen, backed by Iran, have ramped up missile and drone attacks on Saudi oil facilities, and a major strike on Saudi Aramco's infrastructure could cause global oil prices to skyrocket overnight. We're talking about $200 a barrel oil, supply chain collapse, and economic shockwaves hitting every country on the planet. The U.S. and its allies cannot afford to let this happen, meaning they might have to launch preemptive strikes against Iranian-backed forces, dragging the region further into chaos. And let's not forget Turkey, a wild card with growing ambitions. Erdogan has hinted at expanding Turkey's influence into Syria, Iraq, and even Libya, sparking potential clashes with both Russia and NATO. Meanwhile, Russia is deepening its military presence in Syria, and the possibility of a direct confrontation between Russian and U.S. forces in the region is higher than ever. One wrong move, one accidental strike, and suddenly the Middle East becomes the epicenter of a global war. The sheer number of powerful nations with interest in the region, the U.S., Russia, China, Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and NATO, makes it clear that if a conflict explodes, it won't stay contained. The entire world will feel the impact. 1. A cyber attack could cripple the world and lead to all-out war. We always think of war in terms of tanks, missiles, and troops, but 2025 might be the year World War III starts with a keyboard instead of a bullet. A full-scale cyber war is no longer a future threat. It's happening right now, and it's only a matter of time before it crosses the line into direct military conflict. Think about what's already happening. In just the last few months, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have massively escalated their cyber operations, targeting everything from power grids to financial markets. The U.S. isn't sitting still either. American cyber forces have been launching their own retaliatory strikes, taking down state-backed hacker networks and crippling foreign servers. This isn't just petty espionage anymore. It's a digital arms race that could turn into a catastrophic first strike at any moment. Now imagine this, a cyber attack so massive it shuts down an entire country's economy in minutes. A blackout across New York, London, or Tokyo, taking down banks, hospitals, and communication networks. Planes grounded, ATMs frozen, stock markets crashing in real time. That kind of chaos wouldn't just be an inconvenience, it would force governments to respond as if they were under attack by conventional weapons. And here's the terrifying part. Some nations have already stated that a large-scale cyber attack would be met with a military response. In other words, if China or Russia were blamed for a major cyber event in the US or Europe, Washington could strike back with missiles, not just firewalls. But it's not just governments at risk. AI-driven cyber attacks are getting so advanced that they can take over entire power grids and shut down infrastructure with almost zero warning. In 2024, several European nations were hit with state-sponsored ransomware attacks that paralyzed industries for weeks. In the U.S., top energy officials are now warning that hackers are actively probing nuclear power plants, looking for vulnerabilities. What happens when they find one? What happens if hackers shut down a nuclear reactor's cooling system? And let's not forget financial warfare. What if an enemy nation decided to wipe out trillions of dollars in stock value by triggering a market-wide crash using algorithmic hacks? What if the entire internet went dark for 48 hours? The modern world isn't built to survive something like that. Countries would scramble to find out who was responsible, and in the fog of war, a miscalculation could send missiles flying before anyone has time to confirm what really happened. Here's where things get even worse. China and Russia have been working on their own internet firewalls, essentially creating entirely separate digital ecosystems that can survive an attack on global networks. The West? Not so much. If the US or Europe gets hit with a cyber strike that cripples its economy, it could take weeks or months to recover. Meanwhile, China and Russia could keep operating, tightening their control over global trade and military movements while the West is paralyzed. Could this be the perfect first move in World War III? Imagine a cyber attack so devastating that the US government or NATO believes it to be an act of war. Missiles wouldn't be far behind. In a world where cyber warfare is advancing faster than international laws can keep up, the risk of an all-out digital Pearl Harbor is rising by the day. And when that happens, the entire world could be plunged into the most devastating war in history, without a single shot fired first.